Hello, poetry lovers. The video tonight shows the creation of a new poem I'm simply calling Villanelle, because that's what it is. Stick around to the end of the video to see the complete first draft. I had been wanting to write a villanelle for years. You might be familiar with the famous villanelle, Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas, or maybe Elizabeth Bishop's incredible villanelle, One Art. I read these poems years ago during my education, and I've always wanted to explore the villanelle as a form, but I held off because I didn't have an idea that seemed quite right. The villanelle is a repetitive form. It includes 5 tercets or 3-line stanzas followed by a final quatrain. The tercets have an ABA rhyme scheme, which means that the first and last lines rhyme. But the pattern of repetition is what makes a villanelle really exciting and unique. The first stanza introduces 2 rhyming lines that are used again in a specific pattern throughout the poem, and which both appear again in the final quatrain. So the wonderful challenge of writing a villanelle is that you need to write about something that will bear the repetition of ideas without becoming boring or redundant. And this is why I waited so long to try a villanelle myself. But the week that I wrote this poem, I had an idea that seemed to fit well with the repetition of this form. If you know me, you know that I'm a lot. I'm loud and I talk fast and I feel everything so deeply that it can seem weird to others, and because of this, I've often felt like I'm just too much for the world around me. And now that I have my own kids, I'm seeing some similarities in them. So the previous week, I was beginning to consider how I could encourage my son, who's still pretty young, to be authentically himself, and the ideas I was considering formed into 2 lines of iambic pentameter. One of the most powerful uses of poetry is giving voice to this kind of thought process. Poems can be used to establish a shared identity, to encourage people in authentic self-expression, to bolster confidence, to give hope that a person can find their tribe, even if that tribe is only accessible through the written word. So I was excited when I started writing because I wanted to write for my son, for myself, and for anyone else who is resisting the urge to shrink themselves. But of course, writing in form is hard. One of the first things I did was write my lists of rhyming words for the 2 rhymes I started with. This helped some, and my list did give a little inspiration on different directions I could pursue to express the theme. But the writing was slow and halting. I did a lot of mental counting to make sure my syllables worked out in iambic pentameter. I wrote slowly and thoughtfully, but I still had several places where I needed to pause and restart or consult my thesaurus for a word with the necessary stress pattern. So the hardest work of writing this poem was balancing my excitement for the task with the hard mental work of shaping the ideas I had into villanelle form. As I started the final stanza, I had a long pause. I read back over the whole poem multiple times, made a few shifts to wording, and sat still thinking a lot. As I finished the draft, I read back through again. I was specifically checking to ensure that the repetition of lines didn't become redundant, so I moved some words around to create a little more variation and to better support the ideas in each stanza. And then I sat back and looked over what I'd done. And when I decided I was finished, I wrote the title with a dedication to my son. Honestly, I really enjoyed writing this form. Repetitive forms like this are challenging to keep fresh through the entire piece, and I do wonder if I could change anything to make this one engaging throughout. But I'm so glad I gave this a try. Here's the first draft of a villanelle I wrote for my son, written in about 33 minutes on March 13th, 2024. Villanelle. Don't question what you were created for. They will want your silence. Darling, be louder, bigger, braver, brighter, more. The world will sanction hatred, prosper war, love violence, then ask you to agree. Don't question what you were created for. You'll find your voice, then find those who ignore your zeal because you speak too urgently. Be bigger, brighter, braver, louder, more. They'll persecute the people you adore. You'll find what's lost and set the captive free. Don't question what you were created for. You'll find plans, prospects, strategies, a bore, and act. They'll say, calm down, only to see you brighter, braver, bigger, louder, more. The world will want you passive at your core, but love, you bless by loving vividly. Don't question what you were created for. Be braver, bigger, louder, brighter, more. Thanks for watching this episode of Ars Poeticat. If you liked watching poetry happen, please like and subscribe. Then go make some art.